Welcome to my newest challenge run. Today I wanted to find out whether it was possible to complete Dark Souls only using Halo weapons. This is only possible thanks to a madman called Inferno Plus. He makes all kinds of mods, primarily the Cursed Halo mod, which I played briefly. Now that credit has been given, let's move on. I wanted to see if it was entirely possible to go through all of Dark Souls with just the new Halo weapons included in this mod. I wasn't using any other weapon. Rings and other items were still allowed in this run. Now you may assume that bringing guns to a sword fight is a sure thing victory for me, which I agree with, so I decided to add an additional challenge multiplier in that I won't be levelling up at all, so I'll stick with the base soul level of 6 that comes with the deprived class. I also plan to do the run completely naked on top of the fact to help offset any potential overpowered buffs that bringing the guns to a sword fight would give me. I would also like to state that this video is mostly going to be a boss run highlight reel. I think you can assume for the most part that the basic hollow enemies and giant rats aren't a real threat normally, and they certainly aren't a threat once you're slinging hot sticky plasma into their face. Finally, this is running on the seriously fucked up version of Dark Souls, the original PC port of Prepare to Die edition, instead of the much better and stable version of the remastered version, so there may be at times some seriously shitty frame rate issues. More towards the late game, as the game and the optimisation just falls apart. Thankfully, that won't be until the very end, so if you manage to stick around for that long, then your reward is a super shitty looking video. With that out of the way, let's move on. I started off with creating my character. I got him as close to the Master Chief as I could, which is basically making his skin green, not that it matters. I did later find out that the dev for the mod did actually include the Spartan armour in the game. After watching the fantastic cutscene introducing the scene, we're introduced to Oscar as he drops a body into our cell. We grab the key, let ourselves out, and eventually get to the first hidden gun, the plasma pistol, which will carry us a certain way through the game, which is good because it's the only gun I'll be able to find for a while. After we get the gun, we deal with Oscar for dropping a corpse on top of us. Make our way upstairs, dodge a boulder, and enter the boss fight with your mum. Fortunately, for once she didn't give us any trouble. We reach Firelink's shrine and are told that we need to ring 2 bells of awakening. So off we trek after dealing with a few hollow undead that really aren't worth talking about. After we breeze past them, we get to the Tauros Demon. Now usually you'd climb the ladder and do a plunge attack on him a couple of times and he's dealt with. Unfortunately with the gun, that's not an option. Luckily this being the second boss of the game, it really isn't a challenge, and a couple of dodge rolls later and he's down and out for the count. Continuing onwards, we meet Solaire and he talks to us about jolly cooperation. Now, we won't really be using his help sadly, as he can't use any guns. After we were done talking to him, we finally encounter the Drake. Now I figured that with guns, the Drake would be a piece of cake to take down. As it turns out, no it wasn't. Even with guns, it was no pushover, and for the first time so far, I died. I admit that I kinda wanted to get further than I had before I died. Just as a matter of personal pride. Sort of like that one achievement in Dark Souls 2. Unfortunately, I forgot to kick the ladder down in the Undead Burg, or even to rest there, so I had to run all the way back from Firelink's shrine. That'll teach me for having confidence in myself. Racing along, we get to the cathedral at the Undead Parish. We climb to the top and walk out onto the roof. With the range that the guns afford, I try to be a little bit cheeky here and try to take the Gargoyles out from range before the fight even starts. Unfortunately, no such luck. We have no choice but to take on 2 guys at once, just like your sister. Unfortunately, I couldn't finish one off quick enough and they both come at once. Luckily, the second time around I was able to beat them both off before they overpowered me. We climb up and ring the first bell of awakening. After ringing the bell, we head down to the depths to unlock the door with the key we received from the Gargoyles. We head to the depths, and after a brief trip and a few shortcuts open later, we make it to the Tauros Demon. Unfortunately, the first attempt didn't go so well. Usually the AI gets confused and it has a hard time getting to you. This time the Tauros Demon didn't want to play ball, and after a slight miscalculation on my part, I was crushed under his two hand axes. The second attempt also didn't go particularly well, as one of his dogs managed to make me bleed to death from a single bite. Third time's the charm, they say. Unfortunately not for me, as I've been flattened once again by his dual axe attack. Finally, on the fourth try, I'm able to beat off both his dogs at the same time. I'm then free to focus all of my attention on the Tauros Demon, and unload my SMG all over him. However, the SMG is about as effective as it is in Halo 2, and apparently fires peas. After a brief switch back to the plasma pistol, I'm able to take him down. This far, the hardest boss I've fought using guns, primarily due to the small arena and his two pet dogs that attack me. After going through the pain in the ass maze area of the depths, we've gone from the hardest boss so far to the easiest boss so far. With ranged weapons, whether that's magic miracles or the miraculous magic of a high-powered plasma pistol, the Gaping Dragon didn't stand a chance as he pathetically crawled around the arena as slow as possible whilst trying to hit me. It's an incredibly slow fight, so I'll speed up the footage. We grabbed the key to Blighttown, and boy was this a massive pain in the arse. I haven't done Blighttown properly since the original on the PS3 back in the day, when it was about 10 frames a second. Usually I just grab the master key as a starting gift so that I can use it to open up the back door and slide in through the back entrance of Blighttown and skip 95% of it, and just use the lift to head straight to the boss. Unfortunately with this mod, it requires you to use an item called the pendant, which is how you get access to the guns once you find, or in my case, look up where the weapons are. So the master key is not an option, thus I must use the front door and suffer the incredibly bad frame rate and the awful design of Blighttown. Its toxic dart blowers, awful enemies, awful structures, the darkness and its confusing layout. After an incredibly painful journey, we finally get to nearly everybody's favourite spider, for some reason. After a very brief fight, she makes me toast. The second time was more of the same, and once again with the third, except this time I finally lost all of my souls that I had acquired up to that point. This was the first time I decided to take a break from the game. This was my first ball with this challenge. After a short break from the game and the challenge, After a short break from the game and the challenge, I decided to give Quelaag another go. Mostly because I didn't have a choice. Thankfully round 2 goes a lot better and it only takes a single try this time around. We take a brief detour to the Demon Ruins and we take on the Ceaseless Discharge. Thankfully he's not a threat thanks to some cool tech I learnt. After that I make a brief detour to the Ash Lake via the Great Hollow. Unfortunately that was a big mistake. This caused me to suffer. I died over and over and over again just trying to get out of Blighttown. Eventually I climbed up to the top of the cathedral and got myself a purging stone. I then took a detour to the Darkwood Basin. I went to deal with the Moonlight Butterfly. It's not really a threat, it takes it a long time to even register that I'm there. Eventually he takes a shot at me, but it's not enough. It then lands and then at some point I accidentally throw a plasma grenade at it. At this point I had no idea how I managed to do that or that you could even do that. I do find out later how to do it more reliably. Afterwards, I see how well ghosts can hold up against plasma. As it turns out, they don't even give a fuck about my high-tech science weaponry. I decide to leave New Londo for now. I continue onwards to Sen's Fortress, and this was the second wall with this challenge that I have. I also find Sen's Fortress to be the worst area for the first section of the game. Now that I'm an old crusty man, I don't have as much patience as I used to, so dealing with this bullshit of Sen's Fortress really tries my patience. I must have died in this area roughly a total of 15 times. Eventually, I come to the top of Sen's Fortress. I don't know who Sen is, but he's a cockend. Anyway, we eventually get to the Iron Golem, thankfully. He's a bit anticlimactic and doesn't really have much chance against me or my weapons. I decide to take the souls and buy the Seal of Artorius, taking a chance with Cinder. As it turns out, both me and my weapons are severely underleveled and aren't anywhere near high enough to deal with Cinder as he treats me as if I'm a small annoyance. I decide that my weapons aren't high powered enough to deal with Cinder right now. I make my way back through Sen's Fortress and head to New Londo. After fighting through the cathedral, we enter Dragon Slayer and Man-Eater boss fight. Now on a usual playthrough, this is my first wall of the game. Heading in with guns, I'd hoped that this run through would be different. Initially I tried to use the plasma pistol, but unfortunately the projectiles of the pistol are too slow moving and aren't hit scan weapons. I then moved on to my second attempt in which I decided to use the SMG. Unfortunately I forgot that the SMG fires peas instead of bullets and did even less damage to the two bosses. It was then that I realised that the pistol that had carried me so far has become semi-worthless in terms of damage output. Entering the boss fight for a third time, this gun is incredibly powerful, although its downside is the same as its Halo 2 counterpart, that if you fire it too fast then the gun overheats, but it certainly does a ton of damage. I believe the kids call it the GOAT, or the gun of all time.
There we are, the wondrous body.
We meet up with Guinevere. She gives us the Lord Vessel and tells us to succeed Gwyn. With the acquisition of the Lord Vessel, we now have the ability to fast travel. Travelling back to Firelink Shrine, we meet up with Steve Buscemi. He gives us the only real lore exposition dump of the entire game.
Hello.
He picks us up with his mouth, which he wouldn't do if he knew where we'd been, and transports us to the Firelink altar, where we must place the Lord Vessel to help unlock the path to Lord Gwyn.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
I reward his helpful nature by feeding him dung pies. With my new weapons and abilities, I decide to challenge Cinder to a rematch. Before I even have a chance to react or even move, Seath decided to run me down in the quickest death I or anybody has ever had from her before. Rematch attempt 2 nearly had the exact same outcome as the first, nearly being run down in an instant. Thankfully, due to her big size and some fancy footwork, she is largely too big to hit me, so I could just hit her tummy with my beam rifle until the inevitable end. From this point on, I hate all 4 final locations of the game equally. It's also the start of the severe framerate issues, so if you've managed to survive the terrible framerate of the original PC port of Dark Souls, then you're in for a treat. The real Dark Souls starts here. The last 4 locations of Dark Souls are the parts of Dark Souls I don't enjoy. In no particular order: New Londo, the Tomb of the Giants, the Duke's Archives, and Lost Isles. We'll be starting off with New Londo, as I really hate that location, as it's an area without any bonfires, semi-unkillable enemies, incredibly dark areas, and a pain in the arse boss. There's nothing redeemable about this area, and it should have just stayed as Lordran's water park. This area is filled with the poor souls that had their humanity harvested by dark wraiths and then drowned. This leaves them a little irritable when they have unwelcome visitors. Not only that, their only way to fend them off is either with a blessed weapon or a finite item called the Transient Curse. Sadly, as holy as the Holio weapons are, none of them come with a blessed status. Instead, they come with a blessed status effect. So we're left with the Transient Curse item. This is another area in which I nearly gave up on the challenge. It took me nearly 50 minutes in-game time to get through what is really quite a small area of the game, and boy did I die over and over and over again. If you've never had to fight the ghosts that come out of the damn walls, then you don't know the pain of fighting the enemies only to have your Transient Curse run out mid-fight and get surrounded. Then there's the chance that you'll run out of curses and won't have any chance or choice but to try to run through all the enemies. Thankfully, the devs did include a way for you to get more Transient Curses to help kill the ghosts. If you run out, you just have to kill ghosts to get more. That's some 10 out of 10 game design there. You're going to reward me with curses when it's clear I already have enough curses to kill ghosts. Anyway, after a sufficient amount of ranting, we finally arrive at the boss room. We plunge down into the abyss and have to deal with the 4 kings. Now in a standard run, this is one of my most hated bosses in the entire game. And with guns, it's not a massive improvement. It does make it slightly easier to focus on one boss at a time, and it also makes it easier to kill them quickly enough before another version appears. But other than that, it's still the same incredibly annoying, confusing, depth perception annihilating, slow as shit moving projectile that makes it incredibly hard to tell where and when you should dodge. After a long and boring fight, I get the 4 kings down to 25% health, where his incredibly slow projectile takes me out in one. An untold amount of time later, I make it back to the boss fight a second time. Unfortunately this time he managed to poke me to death with his weird tree branch stick twig sword thing. Honestly not sure what it's supposed to be. Third attempt was the charm, and after a few attempts at dodging and rolling and shooting and overusing the word "and", we finally beat him. One of the 4 Great Lords taken down. From this point on, I decided to go to my next location and to deal with the next Great Lord, which was Nito. I take my first steps into the crypt and get instantly killed by this Lost Soul ripoff. That was enough Dark Souls for me today. After spending 50 minutes in the Bone Zone, dealing with skeletons and necromancers and bone wheels, I finally make it to Pinwheel. Now entering the boss fight, I was actually worried that I'd end up getting killed by him during this challenge run. It's never happened before, but there's always a first time. Thankfully, it didn't happen this time either. We kill him and get the Rite of Kindling as well as the Mask of the Child. We enter the Tomb of the Giants, and I'm going to be honest, there's not really a lot to see here. Being surrounded by inky black darkness is great for my video renderer, not so much for anybody watching. I did say hello to Patches briefly, and that was a mistake. But other than that, nothing of any worth really happened until I got to the end and fought Nito. During this challenge run, I've run some challenges, but boy, this fight with this skeleton Lord of Death, well, I genuinely didn't believe that this challenge could be beat with just guns, due to all of Nito's little skeleton friends that kept continuously attacking me. As I stated before, the guns don't come with a blessed status effect, so there's no chance of being able to kill them permanently. That, along with the fact that Nito has this really annoying screaming sword attack that comes up from the ground with a really weird timing on it, that you can't see, made this fight into a living nightmare. Or should I say an undead nightmare. Nito really is the Lord of the Dead. I died over 15 times trying to sort something out. I tried fighting, not fighting, running, outrunning, surviving, not dying, and eventually crying. Finally, after I had seriously considered calling it there and deciding that the run wasn't possible to complete, however, I was finally able to come across some cool new tech that I wasn't aware of. If you trade a skull lantern to Snuggly the Crow, then you can get a ring of fog that makes you harder to detect, which in turn will stop all of Nito's friends from attacking you, and will cause Nito to very slowly shuffle towards you, like an undead should. Unfortunately, at some point during recording, the footage became corrupt, so all I could salvage from that was this JPEG. So you'll have to use your imagination. That's 2 out of 4 Great Lords. As I write page 9 of the script, I have no idea how long this video is going to be. So let's go through a lightning round of sorts. Lost Isolith, Demon Farsage, pretty much the same as the first boss, except now he's flaming. Moving on from that, Centipede Demon, he slowly walks up to me and I shoot him. Here's the Bed of Chaos and here she is dead. I refuse to spend more time on the boss than the devs did. That's 3 or 4 Great Lords defeated. We've finally killed all of the Great Lords that live underground, for some reason. We've just got one left. We head back up towards Anor Londo, and after getting lost in the absolute maze that is the Duke's Archives, I really hate that place. I've played this game so many times, and I still get lost in that maze of staircases and books. Then straight after that is the Crystal Caves, which is also a massive pain in the arse to navigate, what with all the invisible platforms and weird ass geometry shooting out all over the place. Truly, the layouts of these 2 areas could only be created by a madman that wanted the levels to drag on. Am I right? Anyway, after a while, the path I was supposed to take became crystal clear. We start the boss fight and run straight for his crystal that keeps him immortal for some reason. After destroying that, the fight's pretty easy. It just so happens that Seath is a bitch. Not only that, bitch ain't even got legs. He slowly crawls towards me with these weird floppy leg stump things, and I pick him up from range with my beam rifle. With that all said and done, he's dead, and that makes 4 of 4 great souls. We head back to the Lord Vessel and drop the souls into it, thus opening up the door to the kiln of the first flame and one last final challenge. I'd expected to beat Gwyn in a single attempt with my high-powered weaponry due to his obvious telegraphed attacks. However, he moves a lot faster than I do, and the downside of the beam rifle is it is slow to get ready along with its slow firing rate. Finally, after multiple attempts and fighting him, I finally managed to get him. I light the fire and bring about another 1000 years of fire. Thus concludes the challenge run of Can You Beat Dark Souls with Halo Weapons. It was a long ride, and at some points I had a very tough time beating some parts. Primarily the Capra Demon, the Centipede, Spider Legs and Gwyn at the end. Other fights like the Gaping Dragon and Seath were both incredibly easy and proved no threat whatsoever. If you'd like to see more of this, then please let me know. I've got a few more ideas for challenges for games, such as Deus Ex and Postal 2. A like and a comment and all the other stuff that YouTube tells you to do would really help. Thanks for watching. With ranged weapons, whether that's magic, miracles, or the miraculous... Fuck's sake, why do I write this shit?